let's make sure that we welcome on our next partner, which is DataArt. Addie.
I'm super excited to have DataArt and Alvin from the AWS team join in today. Just kind of looking at the conversation we had with Jimmy and Richard before this, we're talking about how the capability of Snowflake and AWS can really be transformative. But the question comes to customers on how. And I'm super excited to have DataArt and Peter come and talk about how we're really helping customers on the ground understand their challenges. And Alvin, you've seen this play out in numerous ways across regions and geographies as you lead our data strategy across financial services. So I'll pass it over to you all for a quick intro. Peter.
Absolutely. Addie and Karen and Alvin, my pleasure to be here. Excellent first 30 minutes, by the way. Couldn't tear myself away from the screen. I'm Peter Vaihansky. I'm with DataArt. DataArt is a consulting partner. We're focused very much on the FSI vertical in addition to a few others, but we've been helping our financial services customers in capital markets, asset management, and a few other sub-verticals modernize and transform their technology, which for the greater part of the past decade or so has meant taking them to the cloud. And a lot of that work has been focused on data. My role specifically is I run our AWS Alliance. In addition to that, I spend a very large proportion of my time with our financial services customers directly working with them on engagements, and happy to talk about some of them hopefully later in this conversation.
Hey, Addie, Karen, thanks for having me. Peter, nice to meet you. So my name's Alvin Huand. I'm on the market development team for financial services here at AWS with a focus on data analytics and machine learning. So really what that means is I get to work with financial institutions of all sizes, right, from the fintech startups up to all the way up to the global financial services customers around their data analytics and machine learning journeys. And one of the benefits I get to see is some of the trends, right, across the industry. And some best practices and key themes. So happy to share those.
Can I ask the basic first question, given how many viewers we have from around the world? So Kenya, Ireland, I don't think I've called out India lately. We have a number from the USA, Poland. Peter, where does DataArt serve for customers?
So our customers are predominantly concentrated in North America and UK and Ireland. We do have customers in continental Europe as well, but those two markets account for over 90% of our customer base. As far as our delivery capability, we have over 30 locations around the world. We're concentrated in Europe and Latin America.
Perfect. Thank you. That super helps all of our viewing audience to know where they can be connecting with you in DataArt.
And Karen, just for those who just kind of joined in, Karen and I are part of the partner solutions team for industries. We really focus on our partners on AWS helping our customers solve for their industry challenges. What really is exciting to us about this series is the ability for us to show our customers how our partners in AWS come together to solve for their line of business challenges. This is through technology offerings, consulting capabilities, but all in all, making it really easy for our customers to leapfrog ahead and disrupt their own businesses and their own sectors as they see value and gain efficiencies in financial services. I've been with AWS closing in on 7 years, and I've done this across financial services and our partners. Karen, maybe a very quick recap and intro from you as well.
Yeah, sure. I'm Dr. Karen Hildebrand, and I lead our partner solutions architects across a number of industries, including financial services that we're talking about today, as well as healthcare and life sciences, media and entertainment, games, sports, and telco. So I'm excited to be speaking at Industries Live today, which is Tuesday from 8 to 9 a.m., but you can mark your calendars for every other week from 8 to 9 a.m., and we will be having our industries partners sharing their stories. Financial services will be every month, and then every 2 weeks interspersed with that will be our media and entertainment, games, and sports partners. Oh. Awesome. So Alvin, do you want to kick us off and tell us a little bit about the trends that you're typically seeing?
Yeah, happy to, Karen. So if you kind of think about data modernization as a whole, right? Really, the key objective there is to reduce the time that it takes to get insights from your data, right? That's kind of the overall goal. And if you kind of look at it from a evolution perspective, right? Maybe going back 10 years, starting back in say 2015, right? a lot of the focus back then was really around the scale, right? It's around capacity issues, right? So if you have things like the U.S. presidential election, or if you have COVID, right? You saw the volatility in the markets, you saw the increase in volumes in the markets, right? So it was really about how do we handle these spikes in volumes, right, and still meet our SLAs. Now, as you get to the start of kind of 2020s, right, we started seeing customers focus more around kind of event-driven architectures, right? So they understood, right, how to handle the scale, how to leverage the capacity of the cloud to address some of these spikes in volumes. But now they're more focused around, hey, can we kick off a process as soon as a new piece of data comes in, right? So a great example back in during 2020, right, was around COVID and the PPP applications that we had here in the US, right? Was, hey, as those applications come in, right, can we kick off that job, right, immediately, right? And oh, by the way, have full lineage, right? So you have where the data came from, when it was uploaded, what data was extracted from the document, and what downstream systems it fed to, right? And now I think more recently, what we see customers focus on is really around data discovery, right? So I think a good analogy there is, they really want to make that data discovery experience very similar to as you shop for a product on Amazon.com, right? So just like on Amazon.com, you can shop for toothpaste and basketballs and really any product you want, right? And when that product comes up, there's a quick description of the product, and then people saying how good or bad that product is, right? And really shopping for data sets or data products, if you will, should be no different, right? You're just searching for a different type of product, right? So that's kind of the mental model, right, that many of our customers are having around their data transformation and data modernization journey.
And I think what you're calling out, Alvin, is just such a foundational layer as customers really look at Gen AI and the direction it's going to take, all of those insights that we look at. And so any organization that wants to maximize on Gen AI would need those foundational catalogs in place, their governance and entitlement controls, just that ease of access to streaming data so that you have the latest news as you're recommending to a customer the right kind of context through the natural language that Gen AI brings us. So it's such a foundational element for any Gen AI strategy being designed today as well.
So Peter, do you want to tell us a little bit about how DataArt thinks about making data available the first time? And then what is the kind of questions that you can interrogate from your data once you have it available?
Sure, happy to do it. And again, I think what Alvin mentioned earlier is right on the money. It's and I like, Addy, your use of the word foundational. I think foundational is right, meaning we're really looking at things that you could even characterize as basic, but sometimes because of the speed of technological change, organizations tend to struggle with those seemingly basic things because they're really not basic once you get down to them. What was indicated in the previous half hour, our focus as an SI partner is on execution. It's on the how. We work with wonderful partners such as Snowflake and other third-party vendors, but also with platform providers like AWS to help our customers take their technology estate to where it needs to be in order to, enable the creation and maintenance of products and services, an increasing number of which is based on data. I mentioned earlier that in the FSI space, one of our biggest areas of focus is capital markets, data providers, index providers, and of course, I'm going to risk being thrown off the podcast for using the blood analogy again, but for those businesses, in a very direct sense of the word, the data is the lifeblood of their entire business. It lies at the core of what they actually sell to their customers, and so being able to get those foundational baseline things right is super important. What we find, and I'm not sure, Karen, if this is the direct answer to your question, but what we find in the majority of cases is, and I'm not going to break any new ground here. Customers tend to feel or find themselves locked in or constrained by a history of prior technology decisions or a history of acquisitions, where they end up with something resembling a patchwork of the ways they ingest and then manipulate data and then serve it up. And so this over time, it slowly becomes less and less manageable. And so what customers are looking for is simplification and universality, a universal approach. Do it the same way, the right way, the good way, as much as you can. Also, if we could walk away from using a million different tools to a handful or maybe a platform or a platform plus a handful of easy to implement tools. That is the trend. That is very much the desire of the technology leaders and technology teams that we tend to work with. Again, by virtue of focusing on execution, we tend to spend the majority of our time with technology leaders and technology teams and organizations. And so the other foundational thing is, of course, governance, security, compliance. That comes very much as a capability that is brought on by modern platforms such as Snowflake, such as even AWS native stack. That here's the thing. What's really, really curious is, I think here's what I want to quote Lewis Carroll. So the fact that the technology is changing so fast is at the same time a huge strength, but also it's a bit of an issue, because just keeping up almost feels like a full-time job. I think, what was it, Brett Queen that said, in order to stay in place, you have to run as fast as you can. And if you want to get anywhere, you need to run twice as fast as that. That's more or less the situation that many of our customers find themselves in. They're busy trying to keep the lights on, keeping the business running. So and the bleeding edge is running away from them so fast that it's difficult to even know what's possible. And I have a couple of customer examples in mind that I could go into to illustrate that. But
I was going to say,
Peter,
Peter, I didn't realize that we were going to have basketballs, toupees, and a heart analogy all in this episode.
All in one.
Unexpected. But we would love to hear actual customer examples of what does that look
Sure.
like when it's down at the actual customer level.
To me, the example that I have in mind, it's a very large name in the index space that I'm not going to name, but that's not an atypical situation. Let's put it that way. When we were first invited to take a look at the problem, by that time, the AWS account team that was working with the customer had done an excellent job of introducing what is commonly referred to as the art of the possible, basically capturing the imagination of the technology leadership team with what the AWS stack might be able to bring to the table. That was juxtaposed against the set of constraints that they found themselves in. Essentially, the technology stack that they were operating on, it was on-prem, it didn't scale very well, and it was difficult to implement the use cases that the business was demanding more and more. So it wasn't a very sustainable situation. So by the time we got to the table and started discussions of, all right, what is it that we need to implement here? Essentially, we were talking about being able to ingest a large number of very diverse sources of data, to then manipulate those data sets in a particular way, check them for any quality issues, check them for any inconsistencies, importantly, provide interface to the data operations team at that customer's organization to fix any of those discrepancies or any other issues, and then serve up that data for consumption to power a number of important use cases. What we didn't understand was a huge gap between the team's understanding and what was possible just using the native services that AWS provides. And we were able to go from whiteboard, just hearing the explanations of the use cases, from that whiteboard to something that was demoable to a leadership team that was actually working with real data sets, performing, being cost efficient, serverless, nothing to manage in terms of infrastructure, in a space of 3 weeks. And it is still difficult to believe that was how fast we were able to go. But that's the power of modern platforms, specifically cloud.
And that's so important, because one of the main things that happens is that the speed of that change directly impacts the relationship of these technology owners inside these organizations with their internal customer, which is the line of business decision maker. Alvin and I actually overlapped, I think, for some time around JP Morgan. And one of the previous experiences we used to have, and when we were, in our previous jobs, was we'd meet with the teams that were in the front lines at the quant desk. And the challenges they would face would often be, look, I just need access to my data. I need to be able to pull data from all of these sources in order to just get analyzing on that complex scenario. I need to probably process information that I need weeks or months to access. This was a few years ago, but the speed at which some of the large banks are changing and transforming is also kind of replicating this change, which is, let's make it really easy for our customers in internal and inside the organization access that information. Let's make it really easy for them to innovate. And I think some of the patterns you're calling out, Peter, are just right at the heart of that. Alvin, I don't know if you remember the old days, but oh my God, the early days when data was siloed was immensely complex.
It certainly was, Addy, and I think Peter, you mentioned a great point about having kind of that interface that you can demonstrate up to the leadership, up to the line of business, and I'm curious to see if you see the same on your side. But one of the more advisable approaches that we've seen customers use, right, is leveraging kind of a line of business use case approach, right? So instead of modernizing your data architecture or your data management in one shot, right? You kind of say, hey, look, let's work backwards from a use case, right? And let's put together some of the more modern technologies, right? And prove it out for this one use case, prove it up to line of business, prove it up to management, right? And then once that's successful, right, you have buy-in from the line of business, and then you rinse and repeat, right? And with each iteration, you learn a little bit, right? The first one is not going to be perfect, right? Neither is the second one or third one, right? But as you kind of do this over and over and over again, right, you start getting better at it, and it becomes better and better. And kind of to your point, with technology moving so quickly, right? With each iteration, there might be new advancements in technology, right, that you want to start embedding, and then you can go kind of retroactive to the use cases you've already built in.
I couldn't agree more. We see this incremental approach, and specifically working backwards off of a known issue that the business has or known objective that they're after, definitely works very well. Generating buy-in, generating excitement, that buys you more trust and buys you more time and more space to continue to advance the solution, as opposed to, like you said, trying to boil the ocean. Boiling the ocean may not be very sellable. Of course, every individual situation is going to depend on the particular history, how we got there, what is the dynamic between the business and the technology. That is not an easy area to manage, and change in general is very difficult to manage. And I don't know if you can tell, but some of these slides there, these are Mark Schwartz's books. And he spends, as you very well know, he spends a lot of time covering this challenging dynamic, the relationship between what we typically refer to as business and tech. But like you said, yeah, this is a proven approach. If you can get something right on a small scale that's relatively low risk but high visibility, and if you can demo it successfully, then that buys you more credibility, that buys you more space to do more. And that was more or less the pattern that unfolded with that particular customer, for instance.
Yeah, I think I was just going to kind of call it out. It's one of those. There's an interesting report by Everest that calls out over 40% of technology decisions are moving towards the line of business. And so, you want to have that line of business stakeholder as part of the early conversations. The product teams that own the tools are going to use as part of those early conversations. And I'm going to go back to one of the most common internal analogies at Amazon, which is, to create that two-pizza team. How do we make sure that when we're getting started, we have a small group that represents the technology capability that's going to solve this problem with trusted partners, combined with a line of business or product team that is going to use this product in the long term? And so by bringing that group together and kind of innovating very rapidly, you're actually able to see very quick outputs, and you have your stakeholder alignment as part of that process, ingrained.
Couldn't agree more. Again, the particular example I'm thinking of, the team that was able to knock out the first pipelines in that particular case was just 2 or 3 people. And they spent a couple of weeks, or maybe more than a couple of weeks, in very close discussions with the product teams to understand the requirements, to understand what the business actually needs, and then working through the technology background and constraints, and then going literally through a drawing board to design and then prototype. It doesn't take a huge crowd to do that. In fact, the pattern that we're seeing is, if you're seeing huge crowds doing things are probably not going very well. Because of our tendency as people, as human beings, sometimes throw resources at a problem when the problem isn't being solved sufficiently quickly for our tastes. We tend to throw, be it money or people or whatever it is, at the problem, where the solution may be in something else, like changing focus, zooming back out, zooming back in, whatever it is.
So Peter, to that point, there's a question that came in through the chat of what are the design patterns, or what is the when we talk about it in AWS terms, we often talk about there's no compression algorithm for experience. What are the things that DataArt has experience in that become superpowers when customers actually engage with you?
That's a good question. I don't want to sound like I'm reading off of a marketing brochure, so how about I try to keep it anecdotal.
Great.
So one important aspect that we find actually makes an impact on the customer and the outcomes for the customer is how well we're able to function alongside our partners in an engagement. I've been blessed in that for the majority of the last 6 years or so, almost all of my time is spent working with both DataArt teams, but also AWS teams serving some of the same customers. And so I would say, and this is based on my own sort of intuition and introspection, but also things I've heard from customers and partners, being able to do this, like it takes three to tango sort of thing, being able to do it together with a partner to solve for a customer challenge and get something over the line is actually not as easy as it sounds. So AWS has a number of programs and incentives that are built in, and they're designed to de-risk and accelerate and take the toil and the pain out of what's already very difficult transformations that the customers are attempting. And being able to align to those and figure out how they work. I'll mention migration acceleration program, for instance, right? It can be quite impactful, but it can be quite difficult just to manage the bureaucracy. So being able to navigate that with customers and simplify and take the risk and uncertainty and fear out of the process by saying, we got this. We'll tell you what you need to do when you need to do it, but it's going to be a breeze. Don't worry about it. Being able to say that actually goes a long way. The customer experience is dramatically improved through the process.
And I think this is an important kind of factor to consider, which is there's a distinct air gap of partners who have showcased their capabilities on AWS, and we recognize that through the industry competencies. DataArt is a financial services competency partner. What they've been able to do is really convey to the market that not only do we understand AWS's services, we understand that in the context of the financial services industry. And something that we work really hard in our teams is to understand our partners' capability and then make sure that we're kind of cross-mapping how we could really accelerate between technology consulting partners all on AWS. The end objective is like when a customer is solving for a line of business challenge, we're able to say, hey, here's a combination that can help you. But it's not just us in any scenario advising this. What we're doing is kind of broadcasting this. So our goal is making it really easy through channels like these, kind of bring that story out, but simultaneously being, on the ground, teaming up and investing in deals and individual POCs to kind of make sure that that translates to impact on the ground. This is kind of a great way in which we also team up both at starting the business conversation at the early POC stage, but then I think, Peter, as you called out, that map funding, which kind of kicks in at large scale migration scenarios, which is something that we're able to put skin in the game in as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
go ahead,
I just wanted to call out another fact. So what we're also trying to do is see repeatable patterns of sort of similar challenges that customers are trying to solve for, and then if not productize it, we're not a product firm. We're ultimately professional services. Will remain professional services, but there are things you can do, such as solution accelerators or patterns or blueprints that you can bring to bear in a situation that calls for it, where there's a similar use case or a similar technology challenge. So we're very happy to be working with some folks on Karen's team, specifically to build those solutions and put them in the hands of our customers.
Awesome. We'll call out Steve. Nice job, Steve Ricardo, on working with all of our partners. So also, DataArt has done a really great job of indicating some of the differentiated services you've offered and the experience. So if you're curious at the more technical level of understanding what DataArt has done in the past, if you're looking up AWS and DataArt, you'll see some of the case studies, actual customer examples where we can talk about some of the tech stack that's underneath some of those accelerators and helps customers to move their data faster, for example, the first time, and solve for some of those data pattern movements that you only get the actual differentiated experience and actually leveraging your data once you've had that initial migration happen. So the migration is important for sure. And we talked about, obviously, going through the migration acceleration program is is a great way to kind of lower the friction. But then also, once you get your data in the cloud is really where the differentiated line of business problem solving that Addie and Alvin were talking about occurs.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize another thing is that our customers are really never done, meaning it's not something that can be delivered and then just operate indefinitely. We're dealing with technology. The fabric of technology is evolving constantly, and so what our customers find themselves needing to do is reskill and upskill all the time. So this is not a trivial challenge at all. It's not about just the deliverable itself, whatever the project at hand may be. It's about the lasting capability. And so it takes all of us working very hard to support our customers for them to continue to succeed.
And I think I'm going to feel free to kind of put in a quick plug there, right? I think I really want to encourage anyone from the audience listening to consider becoming a partner to AWS, right? Because there's definitely customers and how they're going to see value, but there's a very good chance that you can be a partner and actually, grow your own capabilities with AWS to support customers. And so what we do is we actually maintain large repositories of technical assets, domain assets that are accessible to our partner network. Once you register, you're able to progress through and actually access a number of these trainings that help you kind of get started. And a number of our financial services experts and partner experts are available to support our partners who are, strengthening their skills and showcasing their specializations. We'll help out both at that training phase where they're building new solutions, but also then marketing and evangelizing that and driving go-to-market and co-sell motion. So a lot of that journey kicks off with kind of being with the partner network and starting that off early on.
That's a great plug. I support.
Excellent. And given the number of diverse geographies that we have watching here today, we obviously have customers who are looking for partners all around the world. So that's one of the things that is really great about our financial services team is that we are global. So Addie and I are happy to answer any of your questions. So keep popping them in the chat here. We'll have this afterwards as well. So thanks everybody that has been joining us around the world. So we have about 2 minutes left. I want to make sure that we give Alvin and Peter both 60 seconds to give us a recap of what they want to leave us with before we head out for the day. Alvin, do you want to go first? And then Peter, you're going to end us off.
Yeah, happy to, Karen. And you know what? I probably won't do a recap, but maybe I'll do a little bit of a forward-thinking one. And Peter, I'm curious to see if you've seen this or even if you've used this with customers. Karen and Addie mentioned that data governance, well-governed data, right, is really the foundation for good machine learning, good generative AI, right? But we've actually seen the reverse be true as well, right? Is that we've actually seen customers leverage generative AI to help with data integration and data management, right? So a good example there is if you have data coming from two different source systems, right, and it may be named one thing in one system and something else in another system. In the capital market space, take something like trade date and execution date, right? It means the same thing, but two different naming conventions, right? We've seen generative AI be very effective at understanding that this is actually the same field, right? And then being able to kind of integrate those data sets,
Sure.
very, very nicely. So I'll kind of leave it at that, right? Is I think generative AI is going to be, very helpful, right, in the future around things like data management, and the data integration. But yeah, Peter, happy to see if you've seen the same on your side.
I agree. It can, but remember the law of the caravan. The caravan moves at the speed of the slowest ship. So if you use generative AI to streamline or automate a link in the chain, but the remainder is behind, fundamentals are fundamentals for a reason. That's going to dilute any gains that you get from the application of generative AI. So get the fundamentals right, and AWS and partners like Snowflake and consulting partners, hopefully like ourselves, can help you with that.
That was the best recap and way for us to end our hour. This hour flew by. I think we could have talked with you for a very much longer session, but thanks everybody for joining today. Please remember to mark your calendars. We'll be live on Tuesdays from 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific time every other week. So next 2 weeks from now, we will have media and entertainment, games and sports. And a month from now, we will be back with financial services partners.